Hey there, welcome back again to another episode here at my humble abode. And this little episode, I want to take a few minutes to talk about something just briefly that kind of grates on my nerves a little bit. It's an issue that I've thought somewhat about over the years, and I thought it was worth mentioning and talking about. And it's not something that's super important, but it's just important enough that it kind of once in a while, when the subject does come up, it grates on my nerves a little bit, just causes me a slight bit of annoyance. And it's the whole tablature versus notation argument. And what I mean by that is there are guitar players, maybe more of the elite guitar bunch, that actually can read music, read notation, and they're great sight readers, and they think that tablature is somewhat or somehow inferior to notation. And my feelings on that are that's just nonsense. I'm just going to say it. It's to me, it's not something that even should be argued about in the first place. But I just want to talk about briefly why I think it's nonsense. And let me just say right off the bat, no, reading notation and music is good for you. It's like eating the right foods or taking vitamins or whatever, or doing exercises, physical stretches or whatever. It can reading music can actually help you get to know your fretboard. Now, I'm going to admit I'm not the best sight reader. I haven't been sight reading in a long time, but I've been trying to pick that back up again. Not because I'm playing with ensembles or orchestras or anything, but just because it can help you to get to know you to get your grasp on the fretboard a lot better and know where your notes are, and formulating chords and harmony and structures and that sort of thing. But the whole idea, I obviously, so I have nothing against reading music or notation or anything like that. Obviously not. I strongly encourage it. In fact, even if you're a beginner, there's always you can start very simple. But this whole idea that notation is somehow superior to guitar tablature, I disagree with. And the reason for that is because the guitar in and of itself, it's a bitch to read music on it. Reading music on piano or any other instrument, at least most of the time, is way easier than learning it on a guitar. Why is that? Because on a guitar, as you well know, there are about 4 or 5 different places to play the same note. On a piano, middle C is middle C. It's right in the middle of the keyboard. That's the only place that you can play that note on a piano or any other note. But on a guitar, there's about 4 different places to play middle C. And that presents a problem when it comes to reading music because you're trying to figure out which direction to go, what position you're in. There's about 5 different ways you can play the same chord on a guitar, inversions, all that. And especially if you're in a different tuning, things can get bonkers really quickly. So it's not in any sometimes you really need tablature to know what positions you're in, and the fingering on your fretboard, and exactly the way another guitarist arranges a piece to know that is very important. I mean, yes, there are numbering systems when you read music to know what position to be in or what fret to be on, but once you start to get into different tunings, that makes a world of difference. If you're in some crazy tuning like Dadgad or maybe a C tuning or something like that, then you're really going to be lost if you're trying just to read the music. So that's why tablature can really be a lifesaver and come in handy if you're dealing with different tunings and things of that sort. And in my opinion, even if you're not dealing with different tunings, if you have a song that's in standard tuning, if a kid who's a beginner and just wants to learn a song, I say great. If tablature helps him learn to play the guitar, then that's the greatest thing, man. That's a great way to start out. And maybe later on he can pick up learning to read music. It really all depends on the situation and what genre you go into. If you're learning to play with orchestras or ensembles, yes, you're going to have to know how to sight read, and you're going to have to know how to sight read your butt off. But if you're looking to write pop songs or playing with a rock band, you're not going to need to read music, or at least not in those situations. Learning tablature probably in those situations, in a more informal situation like playing with a rock band or metal band, is probably more the way to go. And tablature can help a kid learn to an instrument pretty fast. And as far as tablature being inferior to notation, I say why. Because which got invented first, I'd like to know. Because tablature, we can find tablature as far back as the 1500s, even 1300s, maybe even before that. There was organ tablature, piano tablature, even violin tablature, and obviously, most of all, guitar tablature. And notation was evolving right alongside of it. Music theory has existed for roughly maybe 1,000 years, maybe a little more than that, or at least modern music theory, the way we know it. And to say that tablature is somehow inferior to learning notation, well, that just to know that it existed at the same time as notation, probably as far back as notation, really just blows that argument out of the water. So, this is not something that I generally talk about a lot, but it does kind of rub me the wrong way when some musical elitists say, well, a kid should learn to read the notes, not the tablature. Well, that depends. That really all depends on who they are, what their accomplishments are, what their goals are, who they are as individuals and musicians, and what situations they're playing in. Like whether or not they're playing in a band or an ensemble, or it just depends on so much. It makes no sense to say that one system of learning an instrument is better than another. It just makes no sense. It just depends on who you are as an individual and what situation you're in. I think we should look at those things way more than trying to just make an elitist leap and say that, well, this system is better than this system, because it really isn't. It just doesn't make sense. Even some of my favorite players, like Pat Metheny, I think mentioned once, I have no patience for anyone who doesn't want to learn notation. Okay, whatever. I love Pat Metheny, but he's wrong on some things, I think, and I'm not afraid to say that. Same way with anybody who teaches at a music conservatory. There's a reason why they're teaching at a music conservatory, so that they can really hone in their focus on those students who really want to play in orchestras or in ensembles, and that's what notation is for. It is a communication tool, right? It's a communication tool. If there was a way for orchestras to play the score without notation, you'd bet they'd do it. There just doesn't seem to be a better system. And the reason why notation was created in the first place was because there wasn't any recording equipment back in those days, obviously. So those people didn't have access to what we have access to. So I think that pretty much sums it up for me. It's notation is great. Use it if you must, but tablature is also just as great, especially when you can have a score with tablature right underneath it, and it lists all the chords and all the fingerings. That's the best combination of both worlds. When you ever got notation and the tablature right underneath, you have it all at your fingertips. You can figure out the piece. So that's all I have to say for today. Until next time, we'll see ya.